I'm Caitlin Mitchell, 29, and I'm sitting in my trusty old Honda, staring at my parents' sprawling colonial home. The driveway is lined with luxury cars, my sister Amber's new Range Rover, and what must be her fiancé Bradley's Porsche. My stomach knots as I grip the steering wheel. They'll mock my car, my clothes, my life choices again tonight. Little do they know, I'm worth more than everyone at that dinner table combined. I take a deep breath and step out. Let the performance begin. If you're watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you're from, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, because trust me, appearances can be very deceiving. I park my Honda at the far end of the circular driveway, hoping it won't be too noticeable next to the gleaming luxury vehicles. As I walk toward the house, memories flood back of growing up in this upper-middle-class neighborhood of Westchester County. My parents, Eleanor and Richard Mitchell, weren't always this obsessed with status. Dad started as a financial advisor with modest success, but when he landed several wealthy clients 15 years ago, everything changed. Suddenly, we moved to this bigger house, joined the country club, and appearances became the family currency. My sister Amber, 2 years younger than me, adapted perfectly to our new lifestyle. She was always naturally beautiful, tall, blonde, and graceful, while I took after my grandmother with unruly brown hair and a practical nature. Amber became the golden child, thriving in social situations, knowing exactly what to wear and say. I was the different one, more interested in dismantling my computer to see how it worked than shopping for designer clothes. "Caitlin, why can't you try to fit in more?" Mom would ask, exasperated when I'd show up to country club events in simple dresses, while Amber sparkled in the latest fashion. Despite their concerns about my different interests, my parents did provide us both with excellent education. I attended Cornell, studying business and computer science, while Amber went to NYU for communications. But our paths diverged dramatically after college. Amber pursued a career in public relations, working with luxury brands and building the perfect Instagram life. Meanwhile, I locked myself away coding, building a software solution for supply chain management that began as a side project. I remember trying to explain it to my family over dinner 3 years ago. "So you just type on a computer all day?" Dad had asked, brow furrowed. "It's actually a predictive algorithm that helps companies," I started. "Amber just got hired to handle PR for that famous jewelry designer." Mom interrupted, effectively ending my explanation. What my family never knew was that my computer thing had attracted serious venture capital by then. I'd incorporated my company, Secure Chain Technologies, and was already managing a team of 15 developers. I chose to keep my growing success private for several reasons, partly because I wasn't sure it would last, partly because I didn't want my family's dynamics to change, and partly because I'd grown tired of having to prove my worth to them. While Amber moved into a luxury high-rise apartment in Manhattan that our parents helped furnish, I stayed in my modest 2-bedroom in Brooklyn. I drove my reliable Honda even after I could afford any car I wanted. I lived comfortably but simply, investing most of my earnings back into my company and various charities I believed in. Family gatherings became increasingly difficult. Last Christmas, Amber had brought her then-boyfriend, some Wall Street type who didn't last, and spent the entire evening talking about their weekend in Paris. "Caitlin, you should really let me introduce you to some of Bradley's friends," she'd said with that pitying look I'd grown to hate. "They're all doing so well. You need someone who can take care of you." I nearly choked on my wine, considering I'd just closed a round of funding valuing my company at over $300 million. But I just smiled and said, "Maybe someday." Now, standing at the imposing front door of my parents' house, I take a deep breath. Through the window, I can see Amber gesturing animatedly, a massive diamond glinting on her left hand. Beside her sits a man I assume is Bradley, tall, conventionally handsome, with the confident posture of someone who's never had to doubt his place in the world. I smooth down my simple blue dress, quality material but nothing flashy, and press the doorbell. Time to play my role again. Caitlin, the underachieving daughter who can't quite get her life together. If only they knew I was flying to Singapore next week to open our Asia-Pacific headquarters. Caitlin, you're finally here, my mother exclaims as she opens the door, air-kissing both my cheeks. She's wearing a new designer dress, her blonde hair freshly highlighted. Her eyes do a quick assessment of my appearance, and I can see the slight disappointment. Everyone's in the living room. Come meet Bradley. I follow her through the foyer, past the grand staircase with its gleaming banister, into the formal living room where my father is pouring drinks at the built-in bar. Amber immediately jumps up from her position on the leather sofa. Kate, meet my fiancé, Bradley Harrington, she announces, emphasizing his last name as if I should recognize it. To be fair, I do. Harrington Capital is a well-established investment firm. Bradley stands and extends his hand. He's taller than I expected, with kind eyes that don't match the stereotype I'd built in my head. It's great to finally meet you, Caitlin, he says with genuine warmth. Amber talks about you all the time. All good things, I hope, I reply with a small smile, wondering what exactly Amber has told him. Scotch, Caitlin, my father asks, already pouring himself a second glass. White wine would be great, Dad. Amber immediately flashes her hand in my direction. Did you see it? 6 carats, cushion cut, platinum band. The diamond on her finger is indeed spectacular, ostentatious, but beautiful. It's gorgeous, Amber. Congratulations to you both, I say sincerely. Despite our differences, I do want my sister to be happy. Bradley's family has a summer home in the Hamptons right next to the Fosters. You remember the Fosters, don't you, Caitlin? My mother chimes in. We met them at the club fundraiser last year. I don't think Caitlin came to that one, dear, my father says, handing me a glass of wine. Oh, that's right. You were busy with, what was it again? Your computer job. Mom's voice has that particular tone that manages to make any career sound insignificant. Something like that, I reply vaguely, taking a sip of wine. Bradley turns toward me. Amber mentioned you work in tech. What exactly do you do? Before I can answer, Amber jumps in. Oh, she does something with computers. Nothing as interesting as managing family portfolios like you, honey. She squeezes his arm affectionately. Actually, I find tech fascinating, Bradley counters. My firm's been investing heavily in software solutions lately. I'm about to respond when my mother announces dinner is ready. We move to the formal dining room, where the table is set with the good china and crystal glasses. I notice the candles, the fresh flower arrangement, the carefully folded napkins. My mother always did have an eye for presentation. As we take our seats, Bradley and Amber on one side, me on the other, parents at the ends, my father begins discussing their recent home renovations. We'd just finished the master bath. Italian marble, heated floors, that rainfall shower system I was telling you about, Bradley. Sounds impressive, Bradley responds politely. You should see Caitlin's apartment, Amber interjects with a laugh. It's so quaint. In that gentrifying area of Brooklyn, right, Kate? It suits my needs, I say simply. Speaking of which, my mother begins, serving the salad. Are you still at that same job, Caitlin? The startup thing. Yes, we're actually expanding. Did I tell you Bradley just made partner? Amber interrupts. Youngest in the firm's history. Congratulations, I say to Bradley, who has the grace to look slightly embarrassed. Thank you. It's been a lot of work, but rewarding. He turns to me again. So, what does your company do exactly? Again, before I can properly answer, my father jumps in. Caitlin, we saw the funniest thing on the way to the club yesterday. A car just like yours. That old Honda, with a bumper literally held on with duct tape. He laughs heartily. I said to your mother, thank goodness Caitlin's car isn't quite that bad yet. My mother smiles indulgently. Richard, stop. But seriously, Caitlin, when are you going to upgrade that car? It must have over 100,000 miles by now. About 150,000 actually, but it runs perfectly. I reply, cutting my salad into smaller pieces than necessary. I could help you look at some options, my father offers in what he probably thinks is a generous tone. Maybe we could figure out a good lease for you. Something affordable but a bit more appropriate. My car is fine, Dad. Really? Bradley, perhaps sensing my discomfort, steers the conversation elsewhere. This wine is excellent. Montrachet. I take a sip and nod in agreement. 2015, I think. Good year. Bradley looks at me with slight surprise. You know your wines. Just a hobby, I say with a small shrug. Caitlin went through a phase in college where she thought she might want to be a sommelier, my mother explains, as if discussing a child's passing interest in becoming an astronaut. It's a challenging profession, Bradley comments. Requires a sophisticated palate. Yes, well, thankfully she focused on more practical pursuits, my father says. Though I still don't quite understand what this company of yours actually produces, Caitlin. We develop supply chain management software that... Oh, before I forget, Amber interrupts yet again. We've decided on a June wedding at the Harrington estate. Mother, we need to go dress shopping soon. I'm thinking Vera Wang or maybe Ellie Saab. And just like that, the conversation returns to Amber's world. I notice Bradley glancing at me apologetically, but I've grown used to this dynamic. The meal progresses, my mother serving her signature beef tenderloin with roasted vegetables. When I mention I'll be traveling next week, no one asks where or why. Some of us work for real money, not just to fund backpacking trips, Amber says with a laugh when I decline a second glass of wine, explaining I have an early meeting tomorrow. I bite my tongue, reminding myself that in my company's last valuation, my personal net worth exceeded $2 billion. Not that anyone at this table would believe it. The dinner continues as my mother clears the main course dishes, refusing my offer to help. Just sit, Caitlin. You always put things back in the wrong places anyway. My father refills his and Bradley's scotch glasses. So, Bradley, Amber tells me you just closed that deal with Westmore Industries. Impressive work. They're notoriously difficult to bring on board. Bradley nods modestly. It was a team effort, but yes, we're very pleased with the arrangement. That's the difference between real business and these internet startups, my father says, gesturing toward me with his glass. Tangible results, established relationships, actual profits. I take a slow, deliberate sip of water. My company had been profitable for over 2 years now, a rarity in the tech world where growth often takes precedence over immediate returns. But my father wouldn't know that because he'd never bothered to ask. Speaking of profits, my mother chimes in as she returns with a creme brulee for each of us. Bradley, didn't you just get that beautiful new Porsche I saw in the driveway? Yes, the 911 Turbo. It's a bit indulgent, I admit, Bradley says. Nonsense. You work hard, you deserve to enjoy the fruits of your labor, my father booms. Not everyone understands the value of quality. He gives me a pointed look. Caitlin, maybe Bradley could give you some financial advice sometime. Help you get on track for a more comfortable future. The irony is almost painful. The investment division of Bradley's firm had actually approached me about managing some of my assets just last month, though of course he wouldn't know that. That's very kind, but I'm doing fine, I say quietly. Amber snorts delicately. Fine? Kate, you live in a tiny apartment, drive a car older than some of my shoes, and wear the same 3 outfits to every family function. You could use some help. Not everyone values the same things, Amber. I reply, my voice tight. True, but some things are objectively better, she counters. Like not having to check your bank account before making a purchase. I don't actually. Oh, Caitlin, my mother interrupts, reaching across to pat my hand condescendingly. You know we just want what's best for you. You could be so pretty if you put in a little effort. Maybe a nice haircut, some designer pieces. Mom, I don't need. And it wouldn't hurt to meet some of Bradley's colleagues, she continues as if I hadn't spoken. Successful men who could take care of you. I feel heat rising to my cheeks. I can take care of myself. Of course you can, sweetie, my father says in that patronizing tone I've grown to hate. But wouldn't it be nice not to have to? To have some security? I have security, I insist. A startup is hardly security, Amber scoffs. Those things fold all the time. Bradley, who has been observing this exchange with increasing discomfort, finally speaks up. What's your company called, Caitlin? Maybe I'm familiar with it. Before I can answer, Amber laughs. It's something techy and boring. Nothing you would have heard of, honey. I notice Bradley frowns slightly at Amber's dismissal, but he doesn't challenge her. Anyway, my mother says, clearly wanting to move past this topic, we're thinking of renovating the guest house next. Turn it into a proper pool house with a full kitchen and bar. For entertaining in the summer. That sounds lovely, Amber responds enthusiastically. Perfect for pre-wedding festivities. My father turns to me. So, Caitlin, any trips planned? Besides your business trip. He says business trip, as if it's a euphemism for something less legitimate. Actually, yes. I'll be in Singapore next week then. Singapore. Amber interrupts, her perfectly arched eyebrows rising. What on earth for? Work, I say simply, not wanting to explain that I'm opening our Asia-Pacific headquarters and meeting with potential investors. My mother hums skeptically. Sounds expensive for a small company. It's necessary for our expansion, I explain, trying to keep the irritation from my voice. Well, if you need help with the airfare, my father begins, in what he clearly thinks is a generous offer, I could lend you some miles from my business account. I nearly choke on my dessert. The private jet I've been using for the past year costs more per hour than most people's monthly salary. That's not necessary, Dad. The company covers travel expenses. Must be nice, Amber says with a smirk. My company only pays for business class. But then again, we're an established firm with actual revenue to consider. Bradley looks increasingly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. I'm sure Caitlin's company has a solid business model if they're expanding internationally. Oh, Bradley, Amber laughs, patting his arm. You're so sweet to be encouraging. But Kate's always been the dreamer of the family. Remember that pottery phase in high school? She thought she'd open a studio. And there was the photography summer, my mother adds with a chuckle. All those strange close-ups of rust and peeling paint. I was 16, I mutter. The point is, my father continues, some people are built for success in the real world, and others, well, they find their own path. He raises his glass toward Amber and Bradley. To the power couple and their bright future. Everyone raises their glasses except me. I'm fighting back tears of frustration and anger. Come on, Kate, Amber urges. Don't be a poor sport just because you're the poor relation. She laughs at her own joke, and my parents join in. That's when I decide I've had enough. I place my napkin on the table and begin to push back my chair. Caitlin, don't be so sensitive, my mother scolds. Amber was just joking. Some jokes aren't funny, I say quietly. And that's when Bradley, who has been watching me with an increasingly curious expression, says something that changes everything. Wait, Caitlin Mitchell. Didn't I see your Gulf Stream in St. Bart's last month? The room falls completely silent. The silence that follows Bradley's question is absolute. My fork hovers midway to my mouth, my mother's hand freezes while reaching for her wine glass, my father's perpetual smile falters, and Amber's expression shifts from smugness to confusion. What did you say? Amber finally asks, turning to Bradley. Bradley looks directly at me, his expression difficult to read. I thought I recognized you boarding a private jet in St. Bart's about 3 weeks ago. It was a Gulfstream G650, if I'm not mistaken. All eyes turn to me. I feel a strange mix of emotions, the relief of potentially being discovered, the anxiety of having my carefully constructed separation of worlds collapse, and an undeniable spark of satisfaction at the thought of finally being seen by my family. You must be mistaken, my mother says with a nervous laugh. Caitlin doesn't travel on private jets. Actually, I say slowly, placing my fork down, I was in St. Bart's last month. for the Global Tech Summit. On a private jet, my father asks incredulously. I take a deep breath. For years, I've kept my success separate from my family life. I never lied about my company, I just didn't volunteer information, and they never asked meaningful questions. Part of me wanted to prove I could succeed without their support or validation. Another part feared that once they knew about my wealth, our relationship would become even more superficial than it already was. Yes, I finally admit. On a private jet. Amber laughs, but it sounds forced. Stop joking, Kate. Bradley must have seen someone who looks like you. There's no way you have access to a private jet. It's not about access, Bradley says thoughtfully. The tail number was registered to Secure Chain Technologies. He looks at me with new interest. That's your company, isn't it? I nod slowly. You own a jet? My father asks, his voice a mixture of disbelief and dawning realization. The company does, I clarify. For international business. But you drive that old Honda, my mother sputters. You live in that tiny apartment in Brooklyn. By choice, I say simply. What exactly does your company do? Bradley asks, leaning forward with genuine interest. For once, no one interrupts me as I begin to explain. We developed a blockchain-based supply chain management system that allows companies to track products from raw materials to consumer delivery with unprecedented security and efficiency. We started with pharmaceuticals, ensuring medications weren't counterfeit or compromised in transit, and expanded from there. Bradley's eyes widen. You're that Secure Chain? The one that just signed the contract with the European Union for vaccine distribution tracking. I nod again. But that company is worth. Bradley trails off, apparently doing mental calculations. Our last valuation was $4.7 billion, I say quietly. My mother's wine glass slips from her fingers, spilling red liquid across the white tablecloth. No one moves to clean it up. That's impossible, Amber says, her voice rising. You would have told us if you were some tech millionaire. Billionaire, actually. Bradley corrects automatically, then looks apologetic. Sorry, that was inappropriate. Billionaire? My father echoes, his face pale. I feel a strange calm settling over me. I never lied to any of you. I told you I founded a tech company focused on supply chain security. I told you we were doing well. No one ever asked for details. But you let us think, you let us believe. My mother can't seem to finish her sentence. You believed what you wanted to believe, I reply. That I was struggling, that my work wasn't valuable, that I needed your help and guidance. It was easier than trying to explain something you'd already decided wasn't worth understanding. Why wouldn't you tell us about this kind of success? My father demands, his shock turning to indignation. We're your family. Are we, though? I ask quietly. Because tonight, like most nights I spend here, I've been mocked, dismissed, and pitted. You've laughed at my car, criticized my apartment, suggested I need financial help, and literally called me the poor relation. Would you have treated me differently if you'd known about my money? Because that's exactly why I didn't tell you. Amber's face has gone from confusion to anger. So you've been lying to us for years, pretending to be some struggling startup girl when really you've been, what, secretly judging us from your moral high ground? I haven't been pretending anything, I counter. I live the way I choose to live. I drive a car that works perfectly well. I live in an apartment that meets my needs. I don't equate expensive things with personal worth. That's your metric, not mine. I always knew you had potential, my father suddenly declares, his businessman persona sliding back into place. I told your mother just last month, Eleanor, Caitlin's smarter than she lets on. Didn't I say that, dear? My mother nods mechanically, still staring at me as if seeing me for the first time. You most certainly did not, I say firmly. You've never believed in my computer thing. You've dismissed my career at every turn. That's not true, he protests. We were just concerned. You weren't concerned, I interrupt. You were embarrassed. Embarrassed that I didn't fit your idea of success. That I wasn't like Amber. Amber stands up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. So this whole time, while I've been feeling sorry for you, trying to include you, offering to help you, you've been laughing at me behind my back? Thinking you're better than me because you have more money. No, Amber, I say, feeling suddenly tired. I've never thought I was better than you. I just wanted to be valued for who I am, not what I own or earn. But you let us pity you, she shouts, tears forming in her eyes. You chose to pity me, I correct her. I never asked for it. Bradley reaches for Amber's hand. Amber, maybe we should. She yanks her hand away. Did you know about this? Is that why you asked about the jet? No, Bradley says calmly. I genuinely thought I recognized Caitlin in St. Bart's. I follow tech startups as part of my job, and Secure Chain has been on our radar for potential investment opportunities. I just didn't make the connection until tonight. So everyone knows about my sister's amazing success except her own family? Amber's voice cracks. How humiliating. And with that, she storms out of the dining room. A moment later, we hear a door slam upstairs. My mother looks torn between following her younger daughter and continuing this revelation with me. Caitlin, I don't understand. Why would you hide this from us? I sighed deeply, because I knew that once you found out about the money, it would be the only thing you'd see. Not my work, not the technology we've created, not the problems we're solving, just the dollars. My father, ever the pragmatist, seems to be recalibrating rapidly. Well, what's done is done. We should talk about your financial planning. Have you considered? Dad, I cut him off. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Nothing has changed about me in the last 5 minutes except your perception of my bank account. Bradley, who has been watching this family drama unfold with remarkable composure, finally speaks. Mr. Mitchell, I think what Caitlin is trying to say is that she values being appreciated for her ideas and character rather than her financial status. Exactly, I say, grateful for his unexpected support. My father looks bewildered, as if Bradley's translation has rendered my point in a language he can finally understand. But success should be celebrated, he insists. We would have been proud. Would you? I ask. Because I told you 3 years ago that I had developed a new algorithm that could revolutionize supply chain security, and you changed the subject to Amber's new PR job. My mother at least has the grace to look embarrassed. We didn't understand what you were talking about, dear. You never tried to, I say quietly. That's the point. An uncomfortable silence falls over the table. Bradley looks at me with what seems like genuine respect, while my parents exchange glances that communicate decades of shared thoughts. I think I should go, I finally say, placing my napkin on the table and standing. Caitlin, please, my mother begins, but I'm already moving toward the door. Thank you for dinner, I say formally. Bradley, it was nice to meet you. Please tell Amber. Tell her I'm sorry it came out this way. As I walk out of the dining room, I hear my father's confused voice. But she's the one who should be apologizing, isn't she? And Bradley's quiet response, I'm not so sure about that, sir. I collect my purse from the entryway, step outside into the cool evening air, and, for the first time in years, I feel like I can breathe freely in the presence of my family, even if it's because I'm leaving them behind. I sit in my Honda, my deliberately chosen, perfectly functional Honda, with my hands gripping the steering wheel, not yet starting the engine. Through the large bay window of my parents' dining room, I can see them still at the table. My father is gesturing animatedly. My mother appears to be dabbing at her eyes with a napkin, and Bradley sits straight-backed, listening intently. Amber is nowhere to be seen. Part of me wants to drive away and never look back. But another part, perhaps the stronger part, knows that running away would just perpetuate the dysfunction. With a deep sigh, I exit the car and walk back to the house. When I re-enter the dining room, the conversation halts abruptly. Caitlin, my mother says, surprised. We thought you'd left. I was about to, I admit. But I realized we need to finish this conversation. All of us. I look toward the ceiling, indicating Amber's absence. She's locked herself in her old bedroom, my father explains, looking uncomfortable. She won't come out. I'll talk to her, Bradley offers, standing. No, I say firmly. I should be the one to do it. I climb the familiar staircase, passing framed family photos that document our history, my parents' wedding, Amber and me as children, always Amber in front, me slightly behind, Amber's graduation, various family vacations. I notice with a pang that photos of my college graduation are conspicuously absent. I knock softly on Amber's door. Amber? It's me. Can we talk? Go away, comes her muffled response. Please, Amber. 5 minutes. Then if you still want me to leave, I will. After a long pause, I hear movement, and the door opens slightly. Amber's perfect makeup is streaked with tears, her eyes red and puffy. What could you possibly have to say to me, she demands. I take a deep breath. I'm sorry I kept this from you. Not because I owed you my financial information, but because it created a false dynamic between us. She looks at me suspiciously, but opens the door wider, allowing me to enter. Her childhood bedroom remains largely unchanged, cheerleading trophies, photos of high school friends, the pale pink walls our mother let her choose when we moved in. Why? She asks simply, sitting on the edge of her bed. Why would you let us believe you were struggling when you had? Because I needed to know that you valued me regardless of my bank account, I explain, remaining standing. And to be honest, the evidence suggested you didn't. That's not fair, she protests. I've always tried to help you. I've offered to introduce you to successful men, to help with your wardrobe, to fix me, I interrupt. Because you saw me as broken. As less than. You never once asked about my work with genuine interest. You never once considered that I might be successful on my own terms, not yours. Amber looks down at her hands, where her massive engagement ring catches the light. I didn't think your work was important. I know, I say softly. That's the problem. But you could have told me, she insists, looking up again. You're my sister. We're supposed to share important things. When's the last time you shared something important with me, Amber? Something real, not just showing off a new purchase or a luxury vacation. She opens her mouth to respond, then closes it, seemingly at a loss. The truth is, I continue gently, we stopped being real sisters a long time ago. We became caricatures to each other, you the successful, beautiful socialite, and me the struggling, plain sister. Neither image was ever completely true. Amber is quiet for a long moment. So you've really built a billion-dollar company? I nod. It wasn't the plan. I just wanted to solve a problem I saw in pharmaceutical distribution. The valuation came later. And the jet? You actually have a private jet. The company does, I clarify. For international business travel. It's a practical decision, not a luxury. We operate in 37 countries now. But you still drive that old car and live in that small apartment, she says, confusion evident in her voice. Because those things serve my needs, I explain. I don't need a mansion when it's just me. I don't need a flashy car to impress people. I give a lot to charitable foundations. I reinvest in the company, and yes, I have some indulgences. I collect rare first editions. I travel extensively when not working, and I have a small vacation home in Maine where I go to decompress. Maine? Amber wrinkles her nose. Not the Hamptons or Aspen or somewhere, you know. Somewhere status-oriented? I finish for her. That's exactly my point, Amber. We value different things. Neither approach is inherently wrong, but the problem is that you, and Mom and Dad, have always treated my choices as if they were objectively inferior to yours. She looks thoughtful for perhaps the first time in our adult relationship. I never thought about it that way. I know, I say. And I should have been more direct about how your comments made me feel instead of just withdrawing and keeping secrets. That's on me. A knock at the door interrupts us. Everything okay in there? It's Bradley's voice. Amber and I exchange a look. We're talking, Amber calls back. We'll be down in a bit. Take your time, he responds, and we hear his footsteps retreating. He seems nice, I offer. Different from what I expected. A small smile touches Amber's lips. He is. He's actually real. Not like most of the guys I've dated. I'm glad, I say sincerely. Did you really think we wouldn't love you if you weren't rich? Amber asks suddenly, vulnerability showing through her usually perfect facade. The question catches me off guard. I never doubted that you loved me in some fundamental way. But I did doubt and still do. Whether you respected me. Whether any of you saw value in who I am beyond superficial measures of success. Amber is quiet again, perhaps recognizing the truth in my words. We should go back downstairs, I suggest. Mom and Dad are probably climbing the walls with curiosity. Amber nods and stands, smoothing her designer dress. At the door, she pauses. For what it's worth, I always envied your intelligence. The way you could understand things I couldn't even begin to grasp. The admission surprises me. Really? Really, she confirms. I just never knew how to say it without sounding less than. And I envied your social ease, I admit. The way you could walk into any room and immediately belong. A moment of genuine understanding passes between us, perhaps the first in many years. Then Amber straightens her shoulders, puts on a brave smile, and leads the way downstairs, where my parents and Bradley await the next act in our family drama. When Amber and I return to the dining room, the atmosphere is tense. My father has poured himself another scotch, my mother is pretending to rearrange the flower centerpiece, and Bradley stands by the window, looking out at the darkening evening sky. They all turn as we enter, their expressions a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. Amber takes her seat beside Bradley, who gives her hand a reassuring squeeze. I remain standing, feeling somehow that this conversation requires me to be on my feet. I think we need to clear the air, I begin. All of us. I agree, my father says, setting down his glass with an authoritative thunk. I think the first order of business is why you felt it necessary to deceive your family about your financial situation for years. And just like that, I realize he still doesn't get it. Dad, I didn't deceive anyone. I simply didn't volunteer information that, frankly, none of you ever showed interest in. Of course we were interested in your life, my mother protests. Were you? I challenge gently. When was the last time any of you asked me a substantive question about my work? About what I actually do day to day? About my goals or challenges or achievements? The silence that follows is telling. Let me give you some examples of questions you did ask. I continue. When are you going to get a better car? Why don't you move to a nicer neighborhood? Have you met anyone who could take care of you? Those aren't questions about my life, they're judgments wrapped in interrogative form. My father bristles. That's unfair, Caitlin. We've always supported you. How? I ask simply. Well, we paid for your education, he sputters. Yes, you did, I acknowledge. And I'm grateful for that. But support isn't just financial, Dad. It's emotional too. It's showing interest. It's respect. We respect you, my mother insists. Really? I raise an eyebrow. Tonight you laughed at my car, pitted my apartment, suggested I needed financial help, and literally called me the poor relation. Does that sound like respect to you? My mother has the grace to look embarrassed. We were just concerned. No, I say firmly. Concern would have been asking if I was happy with my choices. You weren't concerned. You were embarrassed. Embarrassed that I didn't conform to your vision of success. That's not true, my father begins, but Amber, surprisingly, interrupts him. It is true, Dad, she says quietly. We've all done it. I've probably been the worst offender. My parents look at Amber with surprise. She continues, Caitlin, and I just talked upstairs, and she made me realize how dismissive I've been. How we all have been. We just wanted what was best for you, my mother says, reaching for my hand across the table. I don't take it. No, Mom. You wanted what you thought was best for me. You never asked what I wanted or valued. And what do you value? Bradley asks, speaking for the first time since Amber and I returned. If it's not the traditional markers of success? I consider his question thoughtfully. Purpose. Problem solving. Making a difference in how critical supplies reach the people who need them. Learning. Growth. Authentic connections. I pause. And yes, I value financial security too. I'm not claiming some moral high ground where money doesn't matter. It does. But it's not the only thing that matters, and it's certainly not the primary metric by which I judge myself or others. My father scoffs slightly. That sounds nice in theory, but in the real world. Dad, I interrupt. I've built a multi-billion-dollar company that operates across 37 countries and employs over 500 people. I think I understand how the real world works. He falls silent, seemingly unable to reconcile the daughter he thought he knew with the successful businesswoman standing before him. I just don't understand why you didn't tell us, my mother says, returning to what seems to be the central issue for them. We're your family. I didn't tell you because I knew exactly what would happen, I explain. Everything would change, but not in the way I wanted. You wouldn't suddenly become interested in my work or ideas. You'd just be interested in my money and the status it confers. And look what's happening right now. We're still not talking about what my company does or why it matters. We're talking about my net worth and why I kept it private. My words hang in the air. Bradley nods slightly, as if confirming some private thought. You have to admit, it's a significant thing to keep from your family, my father argues, but with less conviction than before. Is it? I challenge. Do you tell me the details of your financial portfolio? Does Amber disclose her salary and savings to everyone at this table? Does Mom share the cost of every renovation or luxury purchase? No, because those are personal matters. The only difference is that in my case, the number is larger, which apparently makes you feel entitled to the information. It's not about entitlement, my father protests. Isn't it? I ask. Because from where I'm standing, it feels very much like you're angry not because I kept something private, but because you've been treating me like a failure when I'm actually, by your own metrics, extraordinarily successful. You're angry because you were wrong about me, and that's uncomfortable. My father opens his mouth to object, then closes it again. I've spent years listening to subtle and not so subtle digs about my life choices. I continue. Being dismissed, interrupted, and pitted at every family gathering. Meanwhile, I was building something meaningful, something I'm proud of, not because of its financial value, but because of the problems it solves. And not once did any of you care enough to really ask about it. I asked, Bradley points out quietly. Yes, I acknowledge with a small smile. You did. Tonight. For the first time. An uncomfortable silence falls over the table. My mother dabs at her eyes with a napkin, whether from genuine emotion or a practiced response to conflict. I can't tell. My father stares into his scotch, as if it might contain a rebuttal. Amber looks at her hands, twisting her engagement ring. So, where do we go from here? My mother finally asks. It's a good question. One I've been asking myself since the moment Bradley mentioned my jet. I don't know, I admit. But I think it starts with honesty. Real honesty, not just about bank accounts, but about how we treat each other. About the family dynamic we've created and whether it's serving any of us well. I'd like to know more, Bradley says unexpectedly. About your company, I mean. The blockchain application to supply chain security is fascinating, especially in pharmaceuticals. How did you first identify the problem? For a moment, I'm caught off guard by his genuine interest. Then I find myself explaining how I'd interned at a pharmaceutical distribution company during college and noticed the vulnerability points where counterfeit medications could enter the supply chain. The existing tracking systems were fragmented and easy to manipulate, I explain. I realized blockchain could create an immutable record that would make it nearly impossible to introduce counterfeits undetected. Bradley nods thoughtfully. And you expanded from pharmaceuticals to medical devices first, then critical food supplies, and now we're moving into rare earth minerals and electronic components. I realize that my parents and Amber are watching this exchange with expressions ranging from confusion to dawning comprehension. For perhaps the first time, they're seeing me as a professional, not just a daughter or sister who made strange career choices. I should go, I say finally, feeling emotionally drained. It's been a lot for one evening. Caitlin, please, my mother begins, but I shake my head. I'm not saying goodbye forever, Mom. I'm just saying I need some space to process, and I think you all do too. I gather my purse and stand. Thank you for dinner. And for listening, eventually. As I walk toward the door, Bradley speaks up again. Caitlin, I meant what I said about your company. It's impressive work. If you're ever interested in discussing potential synergies with some of our portfolio companies, I'd be happy to arrange it. I turn back with a small smile. Thank you, Bradley. I'll consider it. With that, I walk out of my parents' house, feeling somehow both heavier and lighter than when I arrived. The truth is finally out, for better or worse. What happens next is up to all of us. 1 week later, I'm sitting in my modest Brooklyn apartment, which, to be fair, is a beautiful pre-war 2-bedroom with original hardwood floors and a small terrace overlooking a tree-lined street. I've never felt the need to apologize for loving this space, despite my family's constant suggestions that I should upgrade to a Manhattan penthouse or a sprawling estate in the suburbs. I'm reviewing quarterly projections for our Asia-Pacific expansion when my doorbell rings. Expecting the delivery I ordered for dinner, I'm surprised to find Bradley Harrington standing in my hallway alone. Bradley, I say, unable to hide my surprise. Is everything okay? Is Amber with you? He shakes his head. No, she's at a dress fitting with your mother. I told them I had a business meeting in the city. I raise an eyebrow, but step aside to let him in. That sounds suspiciously like a white lie. A necessary one, he admits, looking around my apartment with genuine interest rather than the judgment I'm accustomed to from my family. I wanted to talk to you privately. I gesture toward my living room, where floor-to-ceiling bookshelves line one wall, filled with a mix of technical volumes, classic literature, and my prized first editions. Large windows bathe the space in natural light, highlighting the comfortable but quality furniture and the absence of ostentatious displays of wealth. Nice place, Bradley comments, and I can tell he means it. It suits you. Thank you, I reply, genuinely appreciative of his ability to see beyond square footage and zip code. Can I offer you something to drink? Coffee, tea, water. Coffee would be great, thanks. As I prepare 2 cups in my kitchen, Bradley continues to observe my home. You have an impressive book collection, he calls out. Books have always been my weakness, I admit, returning with our coffee. I'd rather spend on a rare first edition than a designer handbag any day. Bradley accepts the cup with a nod of thanks. So, I imagine you're wondering why I'm here. The thought had crossed my mind, I say with a small smile. He takes a sip of coffee before continuing. Things have been tense since last week's dinner. Amber has been cycling between anger, embarrassment, and a weird kind of competitive jealousy. Your parents call multiple times a day, asking questions about your company that they could easily Google. I wince. I'm sorry you've been caught in the middle of this family drama. Don't be, he says firmly. Actually, it's been enlightening. I've learned more about the family I'm marrying into from this one incident than in the previous 6 months of dating Amber. I'm not sure how to respond to that, so I wait for him to continue. The thing is, Bradley says, leaning forward slightly, I admire what you've built. Not just the company, but your approach to success. It's refreshing to meet someone who isn't trying to signal their worth through conspicuous consumption. That's not a perspective I'm used to hearing from my family circle, I admit. I know, he sighs. And I'm starting to realize that Amber and I may have some fundamental differences in how we view wealth and status. I'm not sure I'm the right person to discuss relationship concerns about my sister, I say carefully. Fair enough, he acknowledges. But I'm not here just about that. I wanted to apologize for inadvertently exposing your secret at dinner. It wasn't my place. Actually, I should thank you. I reply after a moment's consideration. It was bound to come out eventually, and at least this way it happened all at once rather than through a slow drip of revelations and denials. Still, it created quite the family earthquake. Some structures need to be shaken to reveal their weaknesses, I say. Maybe it's better in the long run. My phone rings, a video call from our Singapore office. I'm sorry, I need to take this. It's an important client. Of course, Bradley says, gesturing for me to go ahead. I answer the call, speaking with the client about implementation timelines and security protocols. It's a complex conversation requiring my full attention and expertise. When I finish, I realize Bradley has been watching with newfound respect. You're really good at what you do, he comments. The way you explained those technical concepts so clearly, I've sat through hundreds of meetings with tech executives who couldn't articulate their value proposition half as well. Thank you, I say, somewhat embarrassed by his praise. It helps that I built the system from the ground up. Amber doesn't really understand what you do, does she? He asks suddenly. I sigh. She's never tried to. None of them have. That's changing, believe it or not, Bradley says. Your father has been researching blockchain technology obsessively. Your mother asked me if I thought you might be willing to speak at her women's business luncheon next month. They're trying in their way. And Amber? Bradley hesitates. Amber is struggling the most with this shift. She's always defined herself in comparison to you. First as the successful sister compared to your struggling career, and now she's not sure where she stands. I never wanted it to be a competition, I say softly. I know that now, he nods. But family dynamics are complicated. Speaking of which, they want to have another dinner next week. All of us. I feel anxiety rising at the thought. I'm not sure that's a good idea so soon. Probably not, he agrees. But healing has to start somewhere, doesn't it? My doorbell rings again. This time, actually the dinner delivery I was expecting. After I pay the delivery person and set the food aside, Bradley stands to leave. I should get back before they wonder where I've been. At the door, he pauses. You know, when I first heard about Amber's computer nerd sister, I wasn't expecting someone who would challenge my perception of success and authenticity. It's been eye-opening. In a good way, I hope? Definitely, he confirms. And for what it's worth, I think your family will come around eventually. They just need time to adjust their entire worldview. He smiles wryly. That's asking a lot, I say with a small laugh. True growth usually is, he replies. But I think you've started something important, not just with your company, but with your family. Sometimes the hardest algorithms to debug are the ones running our relationships. After Bradley leaves, I sit on my terrace with my coffee, watching the Brooklyn sunset. My phone buzzes with a text from my mother, thinking of you, sweetheart. Proud of all you've accomplished. Would love to hear more when you're ready. It's a small step, awkward and probably prompted by Bradley's influence, but it's something. For the first time in years, I feel like my family might eventually see me, the real me, not the version of me they constructed in their minds. The next morning, I board my company's jet for a trip to our London office. As we reach cruising altitude, I look out the window at the patchwork of cities and countryside below, feeling a sense of perspective that extends beyond the physical landscape. Success isn't measured by the car you drive or the address on your mail. It's not about impressing others or conforming to their expectations. True success comes from living authentically, pursuing work that matters to you, and maintaining the courage to be yourself even when it's easier to play the role others have assigned you. As my jet crosses the Atlantic, I realize I'm finally free from the need for my family's validation. Whatever happens with our relationship going forward. Whether we find a new equilibrium or maintain a respectful distance, I know my worth isn't determined by their perception of me. And perhaps that's the most valuable asset I've acquired on this journey. What about you? Have you ever had to choose between being authentic and meeting others' expectations? Drop a comment below to share your experience. If this story resonated with you, Please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about finding your own path to success. And don't forget to share this video with someone who might need a reminder that their worth isn't determined by other people's metrics. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, the most important validation is the one you give yourself.